me up the other day. I always have to play with Teddy.
Welcome to the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. Now, here's your host, author, speaker, entrepreneur, Cornell Jermaine.
Thank you for joining me today. I have a special guest with me. She is a personal finance expert, a best-selling author, a speaker, and business coach. Please help me welcome on the subject of purpose is not postponed, Miss Patrice Washington. Patrice, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be back with you.
Yes. You are so awesome, and you never fail to give us good information and wisdom, and just easy to talk to, so I'm glad to have you. We're discussing purpose isn't postponed. We know that the work you do is really deep into purpose and chasing purpose and not money. But I want to give some of our listeners a framework to work with as we start this conversation, because we've heard the term find your purpose for so long, and many want to, but they have no idea what that means. So how do you define purpose personally? How do you define it?
Purpose to me is answering, I believe, the call that God's put on your life in a way that impacts others. I really think that if it's just about you, then it's not really purposeful. So your work or what you put out into the world needs to be a blessing to others. I believe that we're blessed to be a blessing. And I think sometimes, Cornell, people confuse purpose with passion. And that's where we kind of fall apart. So we hear all the time, well, follow your passion and the money will come. Follow your passion. And I really try to explain to people that you can be passionate about something. For example, I love singing in the shower, right? I love to sing. I will bust a Whitney tune, a Mariah tune in a heartbeat in the shower. So I can be passionate about it, but no one is going to pay me for it. And you are not necessarily going to be blessed by hearing me, Cornell. You might be a little offended. You might be a little upset with me, right? So just because I'm passionate about it, that doesn't mean that that's a part of my calling. When you're called to something, you're drawn to it because people keep seeking it out. People keep asking you for it. People keep acknowledging it. And for many of us, it's the very thing that we should be working on, should be pursuing, but because it came easy to us, we dismiss it. So when you hear people say, oh, I'm trying to find my purpose, you don't have to find your purpose. You have to accept it. You have to embrace it because it's already there. You don't have to look for your purpose. Your purpose was given to you before you even knew yourself. You just have to embrace the call and stop trying to think it should look like somebody else's.
That's so good. It reminds me of a story I heard someone say about they pretty much attest purpose to go back to that place when you were a child. What did you love to do when you were a child?
Yeah.
And most times, if you think about that, it'll give you a direct insight into what your purpose is. What do you think about that thought? Do you agree with that?
I agree. When I look back on my life, Cornell, the number one thing that I used to get in trouble for was talking. Oh, my goodness. I got in trouble for talking. When I tell you every day in school, the report cards would be like A, S, S, A, U, U. You know, my conduct wasn't always on point, but my grades were good. And the conduct was not because I was a bad kid, but I always had something to say. And I was always thinking, right? And I always wanted to share with other people. My first grade teacher, Ms. Boynton, I used to raise my hand all the time, every time she asked a question, and I would get upset when she didn't call on me. And one day she said, Miss Cunningham, put your hand down. And I was hot. You know, I remember just being so upset. And she kept me in for recess, and she said, I know that you know the answers, but it's not enough for you to know it. When you know something and you see your friends struggling, why don't you help your friends? Like, it's not enough that you're the only person that knows. And first grade, that was the light bulb to me, right? That was a defining moment. So I used to always try to help other people, but it would get confused with me just talking. And it wasn't that I was goofing off. I would be talking and trying to, like, break things down for people. And that followed me all through my school years. But when you look at my life today, what do I get paid to do? Get paid to talk and help people. You know, it wasn't sexy, though. It wasn't like I'm tall, so people used to say, oh, you want to play basketball or you want to do this thing. I played piano for a few years. You couldn't get me to hit a key today, right? It wasn't natural for me. It wasn't my gift. But talking and helping people was what I've been doing since I was 6 years old. And so I dismissed it for many years. For many years, I didn't think it was enough. And the moment I finally began to embrace it is when, like, my career took off.
I love that you mentioned that story. So many can attest to that experience, being a child and having those kind of experiences. How did you, define the space and the scope in which you would use that gift of talking and helping people? Because it's so broad to some. They're like, well, yeah, I like to talk, I like to help people, or I like to teach. So does that mean I go be a school teacher? How did you define the space and the sphere that you would gain your influence in?
That's such a good question. So when I lost everything in the recession, so I have to take y'all back just a tad. I was a real estate and a mortgage broker at 22 years old and built this 7-figure business, did really well, and then the recession hit, and in 2008 went from a 7-figure business to scraping up change. And when my home foreclosed in Southern California and I ended up in my little teeny tiny apartment in Metairie, Louisiana, that's when I really started to have my come to Jesus moment. You know that moment, Cornell, when you're like, okay,
I do.
I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired now, Lord. Something got to change here. This is just a little too much. I've done everything I could do. Nothing I was trying was working. And I remember not having any money, really. Like, I was down to maybe we had like $30 or $40, but I would go to the Barnes & Noble and just check out books. And I was sitting there one day, and this book stood out to me. It was called Coach Yourself to Success, and by a woman named Talane Mediner. The first name is Talane, and I'll butcher the last name, but you can find it with that if you're interested. She talked about, looking at what energizes you, and one of her suggestions was to go back to childhood. So when I went back to childhood and didn't allow myself to stay in the box of what was I professionally just known for, what did I personally enjoy, what energized me, it was being on stage as senior class president. It was standing up at church doing my little Easter pageant recitals. It was anything that had to do with talking and, again, helping people. So when I started to think back and write down those things, the next question for me was talk about what? And that's when I partnered this idea of what are the things I've always been naturally good at and gifted in with what do I have a professional connection to. So what was my degree in? I was a business major emphasizing entrepreneurial studies. So what was my professional career? I owned this business, but a part of owning the real estate and mortgage company was helping people with personal finance. What did my friends always come to me for? Money advice. Right? So I started to see this thread, right, of money and business. So when I thought about the natural gift, and then I partnered it with what do people ask me about, what do I enjoy talking about, what do I break down for people that they typically would feel like is difficult, but then when I explain it, back to first grade, Ms. Boynton, when I explain it, it makes sense. It was money stuff. It was personal finance. It was savings. It was debt elimination. So I partnered what I had always been gifted in, which was speaking and helping, with something that I grew to enjoy, which was, and what was my professional or educational experience, which was business and money. And I said, okay, I'm going to talk about business and money. Now, here's where people get lost, though. They want it to be perfect, and that literally just having that awareness, I've always been gifted in speaking or talking, and I've always liked to help people, and here's where my professional pursuits are. Let me just marry that and take the next best step. Now I talk about mental health things. I talk about family stuff. I talk about so many other things as a part of my redefining wealth concept, but that was the first thing. And I think when you just look at those two things and partner it, that's just the first step. It can turn into something else. But once you get those two down, just start there. That's it. And let it evolve. God will show you the next step.
So good. As a business coach, because you help many entrepreneurs with just structuring their business. At what point, once you make that discovery of purpose, because many, they feel like they can do this and that, and they think they go right out into the world and get money for what it is that they do. At what point should you start asking for money for whatever it is that you've been purposed to do?
I think at the point that you realize that you can create tangible results for someone else. I think that nowadays, with so many people calling themselves business coaches, and you know how it is out here. It's like everybody's a coach. There's so many get-rich-quick kind of scams and schemes that people will say things like, you should be able to charge, 5 figures and 6 figures for this, and you don't value yourself. I don't believe that's true. I believe that you need to start where you're comfortable. So for me, I didn't even know that getting paid as a speaker was a real thing. So when I first started, I was charging $250 for a talk. That was after I did several free talks for months, right? The first person was like, well, we'll pay you. What do you want? I was like, $250? And they were like, okay. And then once I was doing that a few times and I saw the people's reactions and I saw how people were back and telling me on Twitter, oh, you changed my life, or I saved my first $5,000, or all these things, I was like, oh, okay, this is real. I think that you become more comfortable in charging and you can continue to go up once you see results in other people. Not just because, oh, well, I have a degree, I have this, I have that. You're not really transformational until you can help support someone else shifting. So wow. I think that it's still okay to be humble, even in this market where people are doing all the things. It's not forever, but you want to hone your skills. You want to build your voice. You want to get clarity around what your, proprietary method might be. You want to know that you can create results for someone else. Once I started to see that I could create results for other people and what the reception was, it didn't take long for me to understand that this is a business, right? But I think it's unreasonable to think you should just jump out there charging $10,000. I don't tell my clients to do that. I usually tell them if you're going to start a program or start something, start with a test group, start with a beta group, and let people know, look, this is my theory, this is my method, these are my steps to how you can achieve better finances, better health, better relationships, whatever that thing might be for you. And say, in exchange for you being a part of this program, I'll need your testimonials and I'll need your feedback so I can improve this. And once that first batch of people goes through and you take their honest feedback and, get better and make sure they actually got results, then you should start charging. But I don't think you should charge until you can create results. I think it's irresponsible.
So good, so good. I want to discuss a declaration you made some time ago. In this current climate of crises that we're all in, there's so many emotions stirring. And you made a declaration. You said, I give myself permission to feel. And in this declaration, you said, allow yourself to go through the process of understanding what you are going through and how it makes you feel. Why is that important for our entrepreneurs, business owners in this current crisis?
Because I think that there was such a rush, even though I truly believe purpose isn't postponed, right? Like there's still a call for you. Even in the midst of crisis, there's still someone who needs what you have to offer. There are people who are not sleeping at night because you're the solution. So I don't believe in hiding out, but I do believe that you have to give yourself permission to feel whatever you're feeling, because especially as, African American women who tend to be known as the quote unquote strong ones, we will tend to stuff things down and suffer in silence to support other people. And I don't believe that you can truly support other people unless your cup is full. Like we serve from our overflow, right? What's in the cup is for me. What pours over into that saucer is for everybody else. And there's no way for us to show up for our families, for our friends, for our clients, unless we've first shown up for ourselves in private. I always say there's no way. The reason I'm quiet is funny. As much as I get paid to talk, when I'm at home, I'm really quiet.
I understand.
Yeah, like I'm actually more of an introvert in a lot of ways. I recharge in silence. I recharge just, processing and experiencing my thoughts and all that stuff in my prayer closet by myself and so I know that I have to recharge that way in order for me to reach people the way that I do. If I didn't take that time to recharge, I would have nothing for you. All the things that I share, those get worked out in my private time, in my closet, in my prayer closet, or in my office, in the quiet. And so I just wanted to remind people that you didn't have to force a response. And I think that's what we saw. Like, you saw people immediately, coming up with all the programs and, I got to do a whole series and a special and a this and a that. And they were wearing themselves out. And here's the deal. That's when they thought that it was going to be 2 or 3 weeks. But how do you sustain that for 5, 6 months? That's not sustainable. And so while people were busy being so reactive, I was, quietly still doing my stuff because I had to give myself permission to feel whatever I needed to feel and work through it however I needed to work through it, because I'm in a marathon. I'm not in a sprint. So in order for me to show up over the long haul for my clients, for my family, for my business, for my team members, I needed to take care of me first.
Fear is something that is, I think, even if you're not acting on it, some people are in some way, afraid because you just don't understand what's going on with the virus, whether it be medically or financially in the economy. You made a statement, fear is feedback that there is a place within you that needs more love and attention. I thought that statement was so profound. Expound on that for me.
Yeah, I think it just brings awareness. First of all, I really think that whenever we're feeling fearful, we need to name the fear. Because sometimes I think that's the biggest trick of the enemy. We'll feel that doubt, we'll feel the fear, and then we go into these scenarios, we have these whole stories that we tell, and we can see everything spiraling, right? And we're so afraid of the unknown, and we're afraid of, oh my gosh, I hope no one in my family gets sick. What am I going to do? What about my job? What about my kids? On and on and on. And we have all of these conversations. And the truth is, first of all, we need to name the fear and get to the root of, where is that really coming from? Because I believe that fear is necessary, right? Fear protects us in a lot of ways. So I'm not one of those people who's I'm fearless. When I get on the stage, when I get on TV, when I do anything, I'm still scared. I still have those butterflies. My pits are still sweating. Hate to tell you, Cornell, my pits are still sweating. My knees are still knocking. My stomach's still turning. But I recognize that that's because I really want to serve and I really want to show up in excellence. So I understand that what's happening in my body is not so much that I'm scared when the camera comes on. It's more so I understand that my desire to serve people is so great, it manifests as if it's fear, if I'm scared. Does that make sense?
It does.
So now I can address what that is. So for me, because I understand that that's actually what's happening, so maybe I need to rehearse a little more. Maybe I need to practice my talking points a little more to make myself more comfortable. Now I can deal with how do I combat that feeling that comes up for me in those moments. Maybe I just need to pray before I go out, which I do anyway. And so when I understand that, what it's telling me to pay attention to is you're even more fearful right now because you knew you stayed up too late and you didn't get the rest that you're supposed to have. Or it'll tell me, you know that you need to record yourself doing that new talk that you're doing a couple times so that you can reassure yourself that you're prepared. So whenever especially with things that are recurring, that are always coming up for us, it's really an opportunity to go, what is that really? What is that really? And how can I help myself help this situation? It's not that it's going to go away completely, but I can definitely quiet the voices a tad, by being more prepared. And so there's a couple exercises I have people do in my community. So For right now, let's say someone is really fearful, like, oh my goodness, what if they lay me off of my job, right? That's really scary. That is a bona fide concern, and we completely understand. But then you can go through, well, what's the worst case scenario? I get laid off of my job, and maybe I'll have to downsize, but maybe I can apply for another job. Like, there's all these things. But when you just say it out, sometimes as you go down the rabbit hole, you realize none of them leads to death. They may lead to uncomfortability. It might lead to additional sacrifice. It might lead to doing things that you don't want to have to do, and you don't want to have these conversations. But at the end of the day, does it lead to death? Like, does it lead, because that's the ultimate, right? Does it literally lead? And many of us have so many stories going on, and when we really go through it, it's like, well, because in my case, when I lost everything, I ended up sleeping on my brother's couch. Now, was that ideal? Did I want to sleep on somebody's couch for 3 months? No. But guess what? Thank God I had someone's couch to go to, because it could have been worse. It could have been a shelter and not a couch, right? So when you look at it like, what's the worst case scenario, if your brain actually gets to whatever the worst is, if the worst is, well, I'll sleep on somebody's couch, I'll have to apply for government assistance, I'll have to do, those things are not ideal, but it's also not the worst thing in the world. But your brain will have you thinking, oh, my God, you're going to die. So you have to take control of those thoughts. So that's one. And the second one I share with people is what if versus what is. And I talk about this in my new book that's coming out this fall. This helped me so much. God gave this to me one day in my prayer journal, and it has, literally transformed my faith in many ways. And so whenever there are these fears, these nagging thoughts going on, I'll take out a piece of paper, or I'll fold, my journal page in two, and on one side, on the left side, I say, what if? So these are usually the things we're afraid of. So if I'm in the midst of a launch, let's say, and I'm like, well, what if somebody buys said things? Command the Stage is one of my trainings. So what if nobody buys Command the Stage? Or what if out of the 25 slots I have, only 13 people buy? Or what if? And I'll just list all the things, right? On the other side of the page, I'll put what is. Well, what is I can extend the deadline. What is I can reduce the price if I choose to. What is I can put some of my other programs in there for free just to give me feedback. What is, right? I just go through what are the possibilities that I can do. And then I also go through, any scriptures that resonate with me, because what if I'm fearful about this, but what is be bold and courageous anyway? Because that's what the scriptures say. What is, I think about Nehemiah and the whole story about him staying on the wall and when he was rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem, and people were trying to distract him and get him to come off the wall. And he was like, I'm doing a good work and I will not come down. And I'm like, if this is the good work that I've been given in this season, I'm doing a good work and I will not come down. So there's no plan B, C, D, E, Plan B is to keep going on plan A, right? And so I just go through that what if versus what is. As I look back and read them, and this is why I'm just a big believer in journaling, I go back and read it, and I'm like, wow, you were really in your feelings that day about this thing, and look how it worked out. But it literally, once you start writing out the possibilities, it's like something shifts in your mind, in your spirit, where I heard it called the law of polarity. As much as you think you can't, so whatever the fear is, you might be like, oh, I can't afford that. That means that actually a can to it. And you get to shift and tell a new story. So if you're like, I can't afford that, you get to start saying, I can't afford that. And that'll literally start to shift your mind to start thinking of ways that you can, thinking of things that you can do, thinking of people that you can talk to, researching new ideas that you can possibly do in order to get you on that path And it's literally all mindset. It's just mindset.
You in all of your work, you have it's 6 pillars that come through in everything that you do, and I want to discuss one of those pillars, particularly because we're in a time for many where economics is an issue. You know, people are laid off, etc. As a finance expert, what would you suggest a person do in this climate with their money? What should they be doing or not doing?
So a couple things. To me, the very first thing is take advantage of everything you can possibly take advantage of. One of the things that I said on an Instagram TV was there's this notion, especially in communities of color, where sometimes we're too proud to apply. We're either too proud to apply, and then some of us are too afraid that we're going to get denied, so we don't apply. So when it came to the PPP loans, if you're a business owner, right, or it came to the economic disaster loans that were available, yes, we've heard that they didn't do the right thing in the way that it rolled out. But one of my messages in that Instagram video was just, look, but we can't have premature pride, because I saw it over and over again, the messages that were like shaming people who were saying like, oh, I'm going to call my mortgage company, or call my lender, or call my, the car note folks or whoever, and see if I can get my payments delayed. And then I saw arguments between people in the comments saying, well, like, why would you do that? And you need to save that for other people, and on and on and on. I made this video because I suffered from premature pride during the recession. And that was, I didn't think it was for me, right? I thought it was for people who were worse off. We always think, oh, I'm not that bad. But it wasn't for the very first month or so that the recession was starting to rear its ugly head. It was that I would end up needing it 6 months later. And because I had so much pride initially, not from arrogance, more so from ignorance, because I had so much pride initially, I didn't take advantage of applying for mortgage modifications or for anything with the cars or any of that. I waited. But because I waited, I had missed the payment on the mortgage. I had missed payments on my car. By then, I couldn't qualify.
Wow.
And people, like, they were saying no left and right, which is what spiraled into me losing everything. And so I say that just to help people understand you have to remove the judgment from what this is. This is a real situation. Even if you're not immediately being financially impacted today, you might be 2 months, 3 months down the road. So get qualified for whatever you can get qualified for today in case you have to use it, in case it's needed. And I remember going to apply for food stamps, Cornell, back then, and bawling in this woman's office, in the welfare office. They called my name, and I was sitting at this little desk talking to the lady, going through papers, and I was just bawling. And she was like, girl, get it together. Get it together. Get it together. And she's like, have you been paying taxes? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, then you deserve this. You've been depositing into this system so that when you needed it, you could withdraw. What are you so upset about? Changed my life. That changed my life because I had made up all these stories. I'm college educated. I owned a business. I had the house. I had the Range Rover. I had the things. I'm not supposed to do this. But I darn well deserved it because I had been paying taxes and depositing into the system, and it was my turn to be able to use it for a season. And so I hope that sets somebody free, that the first thing is do not be ashamed to get whatever support you need in this season. Do not let pride be the thing that takes your personal finances down before anything else can. So take advantage. Anything you hear about, apply. Let's tell you no, but you apply.
That's right. It's so funny. I'm listening to you talk about that. And I don't even know if you had this experience, but I remember us being little kids, and you know how you had friends in the neighborhood, and everybody knew that family was on welfare, and you just, you played with them, but you always looked at them differently. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking about you saying that, and you said, "Oh my God, in that position now where you like those little kids that you thought about, like, oh my God, I'm that parent. No, but it's so funny how that mindset can be embedded in you at such an early age. You know what I mean? Not knowing that you have a right. You have a right to this. This is yours. You know? Wow, so good.
And I would say too, especially because we're in times of real hardship. Like, this is not about you making it a lifestyle. As soon as I was on my feet, I remember I told them I didn't need my EBT card anymore, and the lady was like, "Are you sure? Because it's about to load."
Right.
First, you about to get hit, and I was like, "No, I'm good now. And I was happy, and I was proud that now that is money that could go to someone else who needs it. But I had been able to rebuild over, I think I had it maybe almost a year or something like that. But I was really happy that I could say, no, I'm good now. So it wasn't about a lifestyle. It was like, for that year, I needed that to sustain my family. And I'm going to be unapologetic about sharing it. And I just want us to not feel like because you have all the things, the degrees of this, or that you're exempt. Hard times are no respecter of person. So don't get into playing that game, because later down the road you're going to wish you had it. Another thing I just want to say when it comes to finances too is just being proactive about talking to all of your creditors about moving. This is really a great time that if you need to pause anything or you need to defer anything because of a hardship. Now, let me say a genuine hardship, right? You don't want to defer anything and let people start accruing interest that wasn't necessary. So not that, but if you are in a place where you're having a genuine hardship, talking to your creditors before they have to talk to you. You don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive. Anytime you're proactive and you initiate the call, you're always going to have more favor because you're getting ahead of it, and that's like, that's a collection call. They don't have to wait. So if you're still talking to customer service and not collections, you're in a good spot. That is a better thing to do. I also really think that people should freeze their credit. If you do not need to buy anything right now, I think it's a good idea to freeze credit because, and when I say freeze credit, that means contact your credit bureaus and put the freeze on it, because what we're seeing right now is that, a lot of scam artists have a lot of free time right now, Cornell. And they're out here, I don't know if you've seen the reports, but they're hacking different sites. They're hacking all kind of stuff. And this is one of those times when, hackers will run rampant. And you want to get your credit frozen now so that if anybody tries to use your credit to get a credit card or go buy something, that they won't even be able to do it because it's frozen and they'll have to alert you. This isn't the time to be like, oh, I'm not worried about it because I'm not doing anything. This is the time when they expect people to not pay attention. And you want to do the opposite. You want to actually pay more attention to what's going on in your bank accounts and making sure that nobody's, trying to do any funny business with your credit.
Do you see any possible opportunities where there may be some even debt cancellation for some people, or maybe they might write off debts, maybe student loans? You foresee that at all?
I sure hope so. I know that there's a lot of talk about different types of loans being forgiven. This is also why I was saying take advantage of any of the SBA loans or anything that you can get right now, because many of those things will be forgiven if you meet certain criteria. So don't think it's for them over there. Don't think it's for somebody else. They have like the PPP loan. There's a possibility that anything over, what was it? The first $10,000, was a grant, right? So depending on what your needs are for your business, why would you not take the grant? Why would you not at least try to take the grant? I will also say that many of us are usually scared to apply for those things because we don't have our paperwork in order. So if this season teaches you nothing else, like if you're not able to take advantage of any of this because you are behind on filing your taxes or because you didn't have your payroll stuff set up or your whatever those things may be for you. Let this be a lesson for you, and I will hope that your lesson is this will never happen to me again. Like I always have my stuff in order because I don't know what's coming. So you want to stay ready. You don't want to have to get ready, because by the time you done got ready, all the funds are gone. So you want to keep everything in order so that you're able to take advantage of these opportunities. I have been hearing more about student loans. I don't know how that's going to go until we probably cross over with this next election. So we'll hope.
We still got to go through that. Oh, my goodness. Look, we I forgot all about another. I said 2020 just go. 2020 just go give it to us. Oh my goodness. Well, we're gonna make it through. Y'all stay strong for this election. Please, please, please go to the polls. Oh my goodness. Amazing. We got to talk about your podcast, the Redefining Wealth podcast. I'm so excited about that because I remember when you joined the podcast family, and now it has grown by leaps and bounds, and I'm so happy. Let us know how has your journey been so far with that show?
Oh my gosh, it's been the greatest joy of my professional career, honestly. I think the first time we talked, I was still on the Steve Harvey show. Back then, I had my weekly segment there. And when I decided to leave in early 2018, I left on my 4-year anniversary from the Steve Harvey show, where I did my weekly segment. And I remember people being like, what are you doing? Why would you leave? Like, can't you do both? Because I had started the podcast about 6 months or 7 months before. And they're like, can't you do both? Why would you give up on that? It's millions of people. And, first of all, I think you have to know when a season is up. It's like I said at the beginning of this interview, purpose evolves. And there was so much purpose, and it was such a great opportunity. And, I did it for 4 years, which was amazing, right? But what I learned was, one, you have to accept when a season is up, but two, there's a difference between people who stumble upon you and people who were searching for you. And on the Steve Harvey show, people stumbled upon me. They were coming to laugh and be entertained, right? And then randomly they would get this little chocolate girl giving them a little finance tip, and they'd be like, oh, well, that was good. I don't know where she came from, right? So they stumbled upon me. With the podcast, people are usually searching for something. I can't tell you, if you look at the reviews on the podcast, I can't tell you the overwhelming number of people who said, I was praying for, I was up all night thinking about, and then I saw this come across my feed. I saw your podcast cover art come up in the search, and something drew me to it. The Steve Harvey people were Steve Harvey's people, but these people are my people. And the connection that I have on the podcast with my audience is just phenomenal. And it's amazing to think about having a space where you don't have to police everything you're saying, because as you can tell, I'm a straight-up churchy girl. So I don't have to police everything I'm saying, for sponsors or for the radio network or, I don't need someone to tell me, well, you have exactly 4 minutes and 4 seconds to do your thing. I can talk for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour if I want to, until I feel like my thought is complete. And I love it. Because remember, I've always been a talker. So this is the perfect spot for me.
Perfect. And I love it. There are so many that want to start their podcast, and everybody and their mama now is trying to launch a podcast. What's one thing you wish you had known before starting your podcast?
What's one thing I wish I had known before starting? Well, I only had 3 weeks to start mine, so there's one thing I wish I knew is that there's no need to like anyone else. Like, podcasting is one of those platforms where you literally can just do your own thing, build your own voice, and as long as you're consistent, you'll find your tribe, right? Your tribe will find you. I think it's really different than a lot of other mediums where people tend to compete, right? And there's this sense in a lot of other mediums that if I put you on, now my people going to leave me. They're not they just listen to you. And podcasting is one of those spaces where podcasters are so giving. You know, we always are inviting each other on stuff, and there's no fear of competition. It's just like a really great space to be yourself and be okay with being yourself, not trying to be anyone else. So I don't know. I mean, even though I launched in only 3 weeks, I was really thoughtful about it. You know, like I really did. I put everything else to the side for those 3 weeks and went all in on what I wanted to talk about and what I wanted it to feel like. And I think if I had a word of advice from new podcasters, it would be that this is not something you jump into to try to make no money overnight. That's not it. Right? This is a lot of work and dedication and commitment. And I see people like, oh, I'm going to launch a podcast and then just do. I'm like, you better launch a podcast because you're really passionate about sharing your thoughts. Because you have to be consistent in order for it to win. It's not going to win when you do it every now and then, you know. So, and it's not about making money overnight. My very first thing was to create quality content consistently. And that was my goal for the first year. As long as I can create quality content consistently for a year, eventually it'll pay off, and it has.
Patrice, you're always a pleasure to talk to. We're going to prepare to wrap up our session, but I'm just curious, amid this current crisis, what has your personal journey been like? What have you been doing? What's been your routine during this crisis?
My routine is funny. I started out with a hardcore routine, Cornell. Like I am committed when I started homeschooling. When my daughter started digital learning, I was like, everybody will be. You will have breakfast. You will have prayer. You will have, like, I had them on a routine. I was getting on their nerves. And after the first month, because we started around March 8th or something like that with staying in. So after the first month, these last couple weeks, we've been up at 11 o'clock playing games. We've been up playing Uno as a family. I've really just learned to, like, you know what? This is such a rare opportunity to have flexibility for all three of us, my husband, my daughter, and I, that I'm like, yes, I'm going to try to have a routine in terms of my work day, but mornings and nights, just go with the flow. I've been so regimented for so many years that I'm giving myself permission to just go with the flow, and as long as I take care of 3 important tasks per day, then I'm still moving forward. That's 15 things a week. I'm like, if you can't win doing at least 15 things a week, you ain't never going to win. So,
right.
Like, you know, like if I just stick to, but I'm not trying to do 100 things per week. And that's where I've had to give myself permission to just chill out. I'm usually speaking. I'm usually on the road. And there's so many days now that my family gets back, you know, with me being able to be home with them. And I want to have fun. I think by the end of this pandemic, I want to be a better dancer for TikTok, my daughter. Do a few puzzles. I love jigsaw puzzles, the really big ones especially. And I want to just enjoy a time that I don't think I'll necessarily get to experience again in this way. So I'm trying not to fill up every moment with personal development. I've been a personal development junkie since I was 19, 20 years old. And right now I just want to know what it's like to have a bit more flexibility. So that's what I'm working on.
I love it. I love it. Well, you mentioned the new book. You got to tell us about it, and when can we expect it?
Yes, thank you for asking. It's called Redefine Wealth for Yourself, and it's based on the 6 pillars of wealth that I talk about over at the podcast. And it will be out in September. I think our release date is September 14th, which is actually the 3-year anniversary of the Redefining Wealth podcast. So I am super excited to finally have a chance to really share practical, everyday tips and habits and rituals that we can put into our lives to improve in each one of these pillars. Because for those of you who are not familiar, what I talk about at Redefining Wealth is the fact that wealth is so much more than money and material possessions. Wealth is actually about well-being. And so we want to cultivate that well-being in other areas of our life. And the better we become at relationships and our space and taking care of our mental and physical fitness, the more money becomes a natural byproduct. So I'm just talking about all of that, and it's so good, and I'm highlighting so many people from my communities and my clients who have used these principles to change their lives, and I'm excited to share it with the world.
Can't wait. Well, we're going to get ready to get out of here, but before you go, I don't think we've played this game before as many times as you've been on here, so we have to play this game called 5 Favorites. And I'll give you 2 options, and you'll tell me out of the 2 which is your favorite. Ready?
Okay, yes.
Reading or writing?
Reading.
A night out or Netflix and chill?
Netflix and chill.
Sneakers or stilettos?
Stilettos.
Cake or cobbler?
Ooh.
Cobbler. Teddy Riley or Babyface?
Oh, Babyface. Teddy Riley. He messed me up the other day. I always have to play with Teddy.
I love it. Well, Patrice, thank you so much. You are always a pleasure to talk to. I appreciate you, and I wish you nothing but success in every endeavor.
Thank you so much. It's always being so supportive. I appreciate you as well.
Well, this has been the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. I'm your host, Cornell Jermaine. Until next time, let your soul be made whole. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Build on Beauty podcast. For more information about our host, please visit cornelljermaine.com.